Give us a sense. Do you think a payroll tax deduction is the way to go right now?
Be with you, and we're doing well. I think the payroll tax, a temporary waiver of it could boost the rehiring of people, but in the end, it also causes further complications on the fiscal side. One of the things that I think is even better is for Congress to grant the president the authority to waive regulations so that small businesses can come up, not have to worry about all the red tape, but immediately rehire people. It costs them about $15,000 per employee right now to comply with all of the federal regulations. If we can waive some of that, that's an even bigger incentive, I think, than the temporary payroll tax cut.
What kind of regulations do you have in mind, waiving for small business? Because I must say, one of the things that occurs to me is OSHA. We tend to think of OSHA as protecting our employees. Don't we need something like that right now?
You would keep the ones you need for health and safety, but OSHA, for example, costs a huge amount to just keep up with the paperwork. So if you gave small businesses basically aren't going to enforce all of the paperwork requirements if you make a good faith effort to comply with the rules and keep it up to date. That's one example. There's all sorts of requirements on truckers, for example, that you can loosen up so they can have more flexible hours and be able to keep up with all the deliveries. A lot of state regulations limit who can sell what to when. If we can get rid of those so that people can have a lot more flexibility in rebuilding their businesses with a new customer base, right? People are still going to be cautious about going out, and you need to make it easier to deliver, for example, deliver your sangria with your Mexican meal.
So David, can we keep this pace up of appropriating money as a practical matter? I mean, I think that so far it's been something like 14% of GDP. We can't keep spending money that fast, can we? How do we come down off of that? What period of time do we need to come down off of that? And let's be clear, don't we have to raise taxes at some point on somebody someplace?
Well, let me talk about the spending, David, because I think you're exactly right. I view the spending that they've done as a bridge, and frankly, it was in a panic, so they probably made it too rich of a spending, so they've got to now look and see as we reopen the economy. That's going to be the best thing to do in terms of actually getting people back to work and things starting to come back to normal, rather than throw more money that was sort of a temporary way of keeping people so they could continue to live during the shutdown. Raising taxes right now would be devastating on that effort to restart the economy. You're going to see anywhere from, I saw a prediction of a 40% cut in GDP in the second quarter. If you then add taxes on top of that, it's going to be even worse in the third and fourth quarter. So I think the key thing for us to do is remove the burdens the government puts on people that aren't necessary, simplify regulations, cut the red tape, and start reopening the businesses as soon as you can using the guidance of the healthcare officials.
So, David, you had the Club for Growth, and in a normal circumstance, we were talking about what can we do to grow the economy. Right now, we have to stop the hemorrhaging and start to come back to where it was before we can really talk about growth. But are there things coming out of this pandemic that you think might fundamentally change the economy in a good way that would allow us to have true growth going forward?
There are some things coming out of it. One, we're seeing a lot more people working from home. That's going to be an efficient way for people to do and get their job done. We'll see more people adopt to that and adapt it. And then second, we're seeing changes in our supply chain, right? Necessitated by the fact that China was completely shut down. Now we're worried and suspicious that they weren't completely candid with the rest of the world about this. And one way to rebuild the supply chain in the U.S. is, again, reduce the cost of doing business in the U.S. so that we can see that business return and all up and down that supply chain have a much more efficient model that will be different than it was before the coronavirus.